Yeshua. Praise Yeshua. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Good to be with everybody once again. We're short on some today that's visiting with their families, but we're glad for everyone that is with us today, and those of you that will watch us through the video, and I'm sure some of you that's not with us will be watching the video later in the week when Pat gets it put up. Anyway, we're gonna go right on into our service today. And of course, I know those on the video won't know what I'm referring to, but y'all will, because we was talking a little bit before we got started. Remember what was being said there, you know, and give your pastor and your minister at least the benefit of a doubt to at least keep an open mind and to study, as Patty was talking about. Study yourself and see for yourself. But we'll be in the 7th chapter of Romans today, or at least that's where I'm going to take my reading. We probably will be in other scriptures, but that's at least where we'll be taking our reading today, as we've been taking others. Like last week was Romans 6, and before that we took the whole book of Galatians. But anyway, we're in the 7th chapter, and what we're studying, those of you that might be listening, all of y'all know, but what we're studying about is our obedience, you know, to Yeshua, Yahweh, and it comes down to the two natures, you know, the carnal and the spiritual nature, and it really comes down to that. And also we studied in Galatians about the law. About the Mosaic law, or the law of the Old Testament, and the part that we have now, and I hope that we've understood the difference between what was then and what is now. Now Yeshua is opening up a lot of things to me. That's one reason I asked you to at least listen and study, to try to understand and try to, you know, what is being said, because it'll be objectionable to a lot of people, and not just to the Christian aspect of the world today, but it could be objectionable to even some of the Hebrew roots or the Messianic movement in what Yeshua is actually, the difference between the natural and the spiritual. And I hope we're trying to get and starting to get across to people today that we don't follow the natural part of the laws that Yahweh put forth in the Old Testament. We are now in a spiritual covenant with Yahweh through Yeshua. And that is something that I'm trying, and I hope to help people to understand. The law that Yahweh gave to Moses to give to the children of Israel was of the carnal nature. And what I'm saying by that is they had to keep it by the letter of the law, and within, you know, their own carnal flesh. They had to obey and keep that law that Yahweh gave them through, if you would, what I'm saying is through the flesh. They were expected, and that was the way it was given to them. But it was given to them for that purpose, to keep them until the Messiah could be born, or would be brought forth. And that is going to be where there's a lot of differences in opinions and differences in thought, is about the Old Testament, or the old covenant as we refer to it, and the new covenant, there's a lot of difference in the and opinions and difference in thoughts. But ladies and gentlemen, they are two different covenants. And I know I've said that several times before, but I don't know that people really get it or really understand it. Ours is not through the nature, a natural man or the carnal man, but ours is through the spiritual man. Our walk with Yahweh is through the spiritual man. And if we don't walk that way, and if we don't look at it in that nature, then we are, how would I say it, not to be so offensive that people might shut it off, but if we don't look at it in that way, and if we don't follow it in that way, then we're making the thing that Yeshua done for you and I, the sacrifice that He made, we're making it more or less null and void if we don't look at it and walk in that aspect of our lives today, which is what we want to refer, and what is referred to is the New Covenant, or Hebrews refers to it a lot as the New Testament, and the Old Testament, New Testament. And the Old Testament was carnal, the New Testament is spiritual, the way that we walk. And I hope that we understand that. And I know that Paul and Peter and John and James, all the apostles, I know that they understood it because they recorded in the Word. Paul, for instance, recorded it in the book that we just studied, about Galatians, I believe it's Galatians, the 2nd chapter, somewhere in the middle of the chapter there, 15, 16, somewhere along in there, where, he tells us that, that we that are Jews, and this is Paul's, what Paul said, it says, we that are Jews by nature, in other words, we that are born Jew, are born to Israel, we know that, the law doesn't justify anyone, or that we're not justified by the law. They, those that are Jew that are born Jew, they understand that, or at least those that understands the Messiah and the Messianic side of this New Covenant or New Testament, is they realize, they know that the law never justified anyone. And no one has ever been justified, and the word justified, if you want to look at it and you want to look it up, no one, if the way they say it today, no one has ever been saved by the law, through the keeping of the law and of the carnal side that they were on. And they knew that, and they understood that. But they understand that we walk in the spirit of the Messiah, that now that He shed abroad in everyone's hearts that believe on Him, that's where we are, that's where we walk today. That's how we walk in Yeshua. And that's how that we fulfill the righteousness of that law. Not through flesh, but through spirit. But once again, it seems like I always have to try to explain myself when I say things like that, in which I really, Paul and Peter and James and all of them didn't go to all the trouble of trying to explain every word they said, but by saying that is where we walk in the Spirit. If you walk in the Spirit of the Messiah that is in you, or if He's truly in you, and you walk in that Spirit, then that is manifested through the flesh. In other words, people will see, your obedience to the laws of Yahweh through the, through your actions and through your walk. They will see it. But you obey it and you are obedient to it through the Spirit that we allow, or we yield ourselves as members to to that Spirit. And I think we said something about that. No, we'll say something about it probably today or tomorrow or next Sabbath. But we are, that we yield our members to that scripture, or to that side, to the spiritual side. And we're going to get in today. Hopefully, I'm going to try to get it all 7th chapter done today, which is going to give the natural side, the fleshly side. That if we yield our members to that, to our natural side, what happens, and what the difference between the battle that we have to put up with, and what happens when we yield ourselves to the natural side of our walk with Yahweh. But anyway, we'll get into that in a moment. But I just want you to understand that we're now in a spiritual walk with Yeshua. We yield our members unto Him to do what He will do in our lives. Not to what we want to do, but what He wants to do. And that is the problem with man today, is they want to have Yeshua in their lives, but they want to do what they want to do. And they have even got to the perception that they can actually do that. If you don't believe it, look at this season that we're in. It is absolutely opposite of what Yahweh said and Yeshua lived. It's absolutely opposite. It's an and I don't know if people want to accept that or not, but it's an abomination to Yeshua and Yahweh for doing it, because you're doing what Yeshua and Yahweh said don't do. But anyway, that's man has come to the conclusion that he can still have the Spirit, but yet do what he wants to do, and that's impossible. That is impossible to do. We cannot obey the flesh and have the Spirit in us to take care of everything I do in the flesh. It's an impossibility. I don't. Once I come to the understanding of that, when I walked the other way, when I walked in the different churches of today, when I walked in that knowledge, I didn't really understand the knowledge that, that's an impossibility. I didn't think about it. I didn't look at it. But once Yeshua opened it up and showed it to me, and I looked at it, I can see where that is an impossibility. We cannot walk in the Spirit and obey the things of the flesh. It's just not possible. Or do the things of the flesh. It's not.
They're contrary.
It's not possible. As Paul said, I believe it was Paul, it might have been one of the other apostles, but I believe it was Paul said, these two are contrary to one another. And we cannot please Yeshua if we do the things of the flesh. We can't please Him. There is no, I think we'll even see, I believe it's here in Romans, that we'll see that. But anyway, it's an impossibility to please the Spirit, Yeshua, that is in us, and do the things of the flesh. It's an impossibility. But anyway, I'm gonna start reading in the 7th chapter. I'm explaining a lot of what's saying here, and before I ever read it. But Anyway, I'm going to read about the first 6 verses before I stop and say anything. Because if I go verse by verse, we could get in a discussion here that always gets man's minds going wild, and I don't want people's minds going wild, and I don't want to get into the subject especially what these first couple of verses or 3 verses here really are referring to, which that's not what he's talking about right now. He's going to be referring to another thing, and I want to keep it within the context of what he's talking about, because if we get to talking about husbands and wives and marriage and divorces and this and that, man's mind goes wild, and well, like I said, I don't want to get into that right now. We've had those discussions before, and we'll probably have them again, but not today. Anyway, know ye not, the first verse says, know ye not, brethren. I want to keep this within the context of what he's talking about is between the law and the spirit and the flesh. Okay? Know ye not, brethren, for I speak to them that know the law. In other words, the natural Jews, they know the law. How that the law hath dominion over a man as long as he liveth. For the woman which hath a husband is bound by the law to her husband so long as he liveth. But if the husband be dead, she is loosed from the law of her husband. So then, if while her husband liveth she be married to another man, she shall be called an adulteress. But if her husband be dead, she is free from that law, so that she is no adulteress, though she be married to another man. Wherefore, my brethren, you also are become dead to the law by the body of Messiah. Listen to what he just said. You know, that you should be married to another, even to him who is raised from the dead, that he would bring forth fruits unto Yahweh. For when we were in the flesh, the motions of sin which were by the law did work in our members to bring forth fruit unto death. But now we are delivered from the law. Oh man, what did he just say? We're delivered from the law, that being dead wherein we were held, that we should serve in newness of spirit and not in the oldness of the letter. Now, like I said, I wanted to read those first few verses there before we ever made a large comment, because I wanted to get the context of what Paul is talking about here. First of all, he made a reference there to what the law refers to about, concerning a man and a woman. We've seen that reference. The law said, as long as, the man liveth, the woman is bound by that law to be with that man. Okay? And he is simply, right now, he's simply making a comparison. And he says that on down here, where in the 3rd verse, where he says, but if her husband be dead, she's free from that law. To what? And she's no adulteress, even though she's married to another man or another husband. She is free from that law. Now, listen to what he's beginning to make some sense about, or beginning to get in context about what he's talking about here. Wherefore, my brethren, ye also are become dead to the law. Now, does that mean there that he has done away with the law? No. I'll say something here that might jar the minds of some of you and those of you out there. But in a way, what he is saying here is, yeah, he's done away with the law. Only he's done away with it in the way that it was upheld or kept under the old covenant. It is actually, I believe, Hebrews, and if y'all want to, when we get done with this spiritual talk here, if y'all want to, we can even talk about that difference in the law again, so that everybody can get a grasp of what is going on in your life and in their life then, and what's going on in your life today. That get a grasp of the difference between them. Wherefore, you, my brethren, you also are become dead to the law by the body of Messiah. The law of the carnal are of the oldness of the keeping the laws by the letter of the law through the flesh is now dead, or has been done away with. Now, he did not say here that Yeshua did away with the law. He did away with it, and I believe we read this also in Galatians, where it teaches that Yeshua is the end of the law for righteousness' sake. Now, grasp what he's saying. We are dead to that law, or that law, and that's what he's saying here too. That Yeshua, we become dead, or Yeshua did away with the law for righteousness' sake. And that's what he's saying right here in the same way. We become dead to the law by the body of Messiah. In other words, through Yeshua, and by Yeshua, we now become dead to the law of the Old Testament that used to be, that was proclaimed to them there on Mount Sinai, because that was given to them for to be. It was a carnal law, a natural law that they were to keep carnally or naturally. And I keep saying those words because I want to make people understand the difference between the carnal and the spiritual, the natural and the spiritual. How that they did it. The Old Testament required a walk according to the law in the natural. Today, our walk is now according to the Spirit that is within us, which will fulfill the righteousness of the law. And I seriously believe that so many today, not just in the Christian world today, but in the Messianic or Hebrew roots movements of today, people don't understand the difference. And people, when they make the statement, I make the statement, and I know I've heard y'all make the statement, and I hope you know the difference. And if not, hopefully after we get done here in the next Sabbath or two, you will know the difference. When I make the statement, or I keep the law, I don't mean that I'm keeping the law. I can't keep the law any more than anybody under the old covenant could keep the law. If I could, I've said this before, if I could, there would be no reason for Yeshua to have ever come in the likeness of flesh and in the flesh condemn the flesh. There would be no, and make that sacrifice that he made. There would be no reason for him to do that if man could keep the law that Yahweh gave Moses to give to the children of Israel. If that was possible, then Yeshua would have never, that would never been a reason for him to come. And that is what I want people to understand and want people to see. There's got to be a difference. There's got to be a difference. And we've got to understand that difference. Regardless of what we've been taught, what we even believe or want to believe, we've got to understand there is a difference there. And when there is a difference, then it's no longer the same thing. In other words, the Old Testament, Old Covenant is the Old Covenant. The New Covenant, the New Testament is the New Covenant. And I know I feel something in my flesh, in my soul right now. Somebody's saying, well, he's making a difference between the Old Bible part, which is called the Old Testament, and the New Bible part, which is called the New Bible. If you understand what I'm saying, you understand I am not making a difference. This is one book. But it's all one book in advancement of the Holy Spirit. And we'll understand that, and if we come to the understanding of that there is a difference, then we can begin to understand where this is an advancement of then and now. Of then and now. And, well, I got off of Romans. Let me get back to Romans here because I want to continue to read here. But that's the difference. Remember, wherefore, my brethren, ye also are become dead to the law. What is Paul saying to the church at Rome? You are becoming dead to the law. Do you understand that? Is Paul making some kind of outlandish, statement? We've become dead to the law. The law is dead to us now. Or is he actually making some sense, if you understand the difference between old and new? To me, he's making a whole lot of sense and what he's saying here. He said, you become dead to the law by the body of the Messiah, that ye should be married to another. In other words, we are now dead to that old covenant so that now we can become married to the new covenant.
Yeshua and the Spirit.
In other words, yes, Yeshua and the Spirit. The spiritual. We can now become married to that. And we're no longer under the other. For when we were in the flesh, like they had to walk it, remember they had to walk it according to the flesh. Carnal. For when we were in the flesh, the motions of sin, which were by the law. Now, what does he mean there? By trying to walk it in the flesh. What is sin, first of all? Every one of you here I know knows what is sin. I know every one of you knows that.
Transgression. Because
we've said it so many times. Y'all have said it. We have said it so many times. The sin is the transgression of the law. It's, in other words, you have to have a law that tells you that this or whatever is sin. We have to have a law out there that tells us that running down the interstate, the speed or the law says we can do it up to 70 miles an hour. Anything over that, then we are sinning on that law. Understand what I'm saying? We're sinning on that law. If we go over that, we're sinning on that law. Because we're breaking that law. That's what the law that God at the time gave Moses to give to the children of Israel. He gave those laws to make it, and he said, you got to do it according to the flesh. It was a carnal. What did we say here? You know, the scripture says that it was a carnal thing that he gave to them, that they had to walk according to the flesh. And by walking it according to the flesh, we know that we cannot, by the flesh, through the carnal, and by the letter, we cannot do it by the letter of the law. In other words, the flesh cannot keep God's law. We will somehow, some way, break one of those laws. And when you break one of them, the law says that you're guilty of all of them. So man cannot keep the laws of God within himself. He cannot do it. And as a matter of fact, it was given to teach man that he couldn't do it, that he would need someone else in order to be able to fulfill the righteousness of the law. He would have to have someone else, which we know became or was Yeshua, our Messiah. We cannot keep it. What did Paul say? Paul evidently was a pretty righteous man. But because he said, I would not have known sin. In other words, I wouldn't be a breaker of the law. I would not know sin, except the law says, thou shalt not covet. And once the law said that, Paul realized that he was a sinner, that he was a breaker of the law. Now what he coveted, it don't say. But he realized within himself, although he kept all the others, he knew that Yahweh was his, was the Yahweh, and there was none other above him, that he was the one. He knew that. He evidently didn't, take the name of Yahweh in vain. He didn't have any idols, and, he kept the Sabbath. In other words, he did the whole 9 yards except one. He said, the law says I can't covet. And if it says I can't covet, then there must be something, then I'm a breaker of that law. So we find out that we cannot keep the law through the flesh. So what did Yeshua do? He came in the flesh. He kept the law through the flesh, and when he did that, and when he accomplished that, then he gave the supreme sacrifice that now, through our faith in him and through his spirit that is set up within us, we now can fulfill the righteousness of the law through the Spirit, not through the acts of man or through the acts of our carnal nature. We can't do it. And that's what he's saying. We're dead to that part so that we can be married to Yeshua, Amen, the Spirit, yes, and therefore keep or fulfill the righteousness of the law through him. And that's the way we can do it. And ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you now, you can't testify that you got the Spirit of Yeshua in you and then be out here doing everything the law says that you cannot do. In other words, be breaking all the laws and saying, I got the Spirit and my faith in Yeshua is going to save me in the end. I'm sorry. You're under a big disillusionment. You're under a big deception. Because if you've got the Spirit of Yeshua in you, though you might revert back occasionally, and I'm not talking about deliberately doing things, you will do things, but that you have the Spirit that is the you have Yeshua, which is the propitiation. Spit my teeth out. For those sins that we have that. Not to go out here and do it everything we're big enough to do and think that He's able to keep us saved. That don't work. But now we are delivered from the law. What? Well, let me get 5. Let me make a statement on that. For when we were in the flesh, I was making a statement on that. The motions of sin which were by the law, in other words, the law made known the sins of God, against God, did work in our members to bring forth fruit unto death. And fruit, and by the breaking of the law is what pronounces death upon you and I. And that's what pronounced death upon the children of Israel, and it pronounces death upon you and I, is the breaking of those laws. But now we have, if we walk in the Spirit and we let the Spirit of Yeshua live in us and we yield ourselves members unto His Spirit, then we fulfill that righteousness of Yahweh through Him. But now are we delivered from the law, that being dead, the law, that being dead wherein we were held, that we should serve in newness, not of the flesh, not of the carnal, or of the letter of the law, but we are to serve in newness of spirit, and not in the oldness of the letter. You know, that's really self-explanatory. I don't think I really have to say a whole lot there. If you understand that you are actually dead, you're dead to the law, that you now can walk in the Spirit, that we now walk in the newness of the Spirit, that is self-explanatory. We don't need that, to everyone. We don't need a hope that explained to us all. And Paul, I went back, I made the mention a while ago that people today is under the deception that as long as they claim to have the Spirit of Yeshua in them and faith in Him, that they can go out here and do anything, whatever they do, if they decide to do it, that they're free to do it because the Messiah, Yeshua, will, forgive them of that sin just by proclaiming to have it and proclaiming to have faith in Him, that they can, that they can do what they want and still be saved, But Paul says, what shall we say then? Is the law sin? Yahweh forbid. Nay, I had not known sin, but by the law. For I had not known sin, or not known lust, except the law had said, thou shalt not covet. See, I have went over these scriptures here just a minute ago. Thou shalt not covet. See, Paul is admitting here and giving an example here that as far as being able to walk in the flesh, claiming to be the Spirit, or just walking in the Spirit or in the flesh itself, we cannot be made righteous. we can only be made righteous through Yeshua Messiah and through our faith in Him and through yielding our members unto Him to let Him work in us. For sin taken occasion by the commandment wrought in me all manner of constituencies. For without the law sin was dead. For I was alive without the law once, but when the commandment came, sin revived and I died. Now Paul is not literally talking about him. We know that he did not live prior to the law of Moses. Did you know, and do you understand, just like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, their sins was not imputed unto them. Now I know, let me say this before everybody gets it in their mind. I know everybody says, well, God's laws has always been in the world. You know, God's laws has always been in the world, but man did not know those laws. You know, and I can explain that. You know, number one, man did not know those laws. You know, Abraham, the law says that a man cannot marry his father's or his mother's daughter. In other words, man cannot marry his sister even though they don't have the same mother. He still cannot marry, you know, his sister. The law says you can't do it. And if the law says you can't do it and you do it, then you're breaking the law, right? And you're sinning, right? But yet, Abraham was married to his sister. He even done it twice when they was wandering in another land. He told Sarah, you know, for example, when he went into the land of Egypt, when he wandered into the land of Egypt there for a while, he said, you know, you're a fair-looking woman. In other words, you're a pretty beautiful-looking woman, and if Pharaoh sees you and he desires you and he knows that I'm married to you, then he'll kill me and take you, you know. So when we come in that land, if they ask, then you tell them, you know, that you're my sister. Well, she ain't lying. She was his sister. And, of course, we know that she actually did that, and Yahweh revealed to Pharaoh that she was actually Abraham's wife. Pharaoh didn't like it too much, and he returned her back to Abraham. But anyway, and it happened again. Abimelech, when they came into that land. Abimelech, Abraham had Sarah do the same thing. Tell him that she was his sister, and he took her. But before he could be with her, Yahweh gave him a dream and revealed in his dream who Sarah really was. And actually the scriptures here explains, because Abimelech asked Abraham, why did you tell me she was your sister? Well, Abraham explained he was afraid that if he knew he was his wife, well, he would kill him and take her. But he said, well, actually, and in his explanation to Abimelech, he actually told him, said, well, she is my sister. She is the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother. You know, and so she is my sister. So Yahweh called a man who would be the father of many nations, and that through this man all nations would be blessed. And this man had broke the law of God. You understand what I'm saying? He broke the laws of God. He was married to his sister. But Abraham didn't know that it was a law. You know, people said, well, how about Joseph? He knew that it was wrong for him to go into Potiphar's wife. You know, even the flesh has rights and wrongs. You know, it was wrong for, even according to the flesh, it was wrong for me to go take another woman, another man's wife, and go into her. I mean, that is wrong in the world today, although they do it. But it's, you know, that's considered immoral. That's wrong. But when you didn't know the law, when you didn't know that you was breaking the law, because the laws had never been given or spelt out or told you, then that law, that sin was not imputed unto you, or it wasn't, you wasn't made accountable for that. Now, Abraham, I'm quite sure, when the laws was revealed to him, and, you know, when God, Yeshua, either came to him after his death, or, you know, he went into the, you know, and he explained, you know, hey, I'm sure that, you know, everyone repented of the laws that they didn't know that they had broke. They didn't understand that they were laws to start with. And I know that is a controversy between people. People won't believe me on that. I don't care whether you believe me or not. I just tell you what God shows me. Like somebody said earlier, remember what you said. Just teach what God shows you, and that's what I do. You know, because the Scripture teaches us that where there is no conscience of that law or sin, in other words, there's no knowledge of that sin, then that sin is not imputed unto you. But where the law is shown to you, then if you break that law, then you're held accountable for that law. And Paul here was saying, you know, without the law, you know, I was alive once without the law. Man was alive once without the law because man didn't know about the law, the laws of God. But once man became knowledgeable of the commandments of God, of the laws of God, then sin revived, and it says, and I died. Now, did Paul die? Well, if he did, he wouldn't have been writing what he's written here. But, you know, literally, he didn't die. But it became accountable unto him when he come to the knowledge, or when that law was made known to man, then man became accountable for that law. And that's the one that he said made him realize that he was a sinner. Was that law that thou shalt not covet. Or you shouldn't, you're not to lust after something else that's not yours. So that's where he said, for I was alive without the law once, but when the commandment came, in other words, sin revived and I died. And when I became knowledgeable of that, I realized that I have sinned and I need someone to save me. And the commandment which was ordained to life, you know, all of God's laws are life, but because of man's disobedience to those laws, they become death to man. But the laws themselves are life. Mm-hmm. They give life. But our disobedience to them, they become death to us. And then we need a Messiah, we need a sacrifice and a Messiah for those laws that we have broken, those sins that we've committed. We need the Messiah make that sacrifice, that we then have our sins forgiven us. And Yeshua became that sacrifice. And that Spirit that He sent back to us is now, if we abide in that Spirit, in other words, if we yield our members as instruments unto that Spirit, and we live according to Him, then the righteousness of the law is fulfilled in each one of us. But only through the Spirit, not through man, not through the deeds of man. Was then that which is good made death unto me? No, God forbid. Yah forbid. But sin, that it might appear sin, working death in me by what which is good, that sin by the commandment might become exceedingly sinful. The revelation of that commandment, the laws that God gave, the revelation of them, that the breaking of them brings death upon us. And that, you know, I don't know about everybody else, but when I came to Yeshua, you know, when I first confessed my sins before Him, that's exactly what I done. I confessed that I was a sinner. And I confessed my sins before Him. I did not quote some prayer or so-called prayer that some preacher recited to me.
Yeah.
I confessed my sins before Yahweh and before Yeshua. Now, I lived in deception for many years, but my heart, and I truly believe this, my heart being honest with Yeshua at that time, He kept me until He could reveal, or I was ready for Him to reveal Himself to me in truth and in spirit. He kept me. Because I, in all honesty, when I knelt at the altar and I confessed my own sins unto Him and asked His forgiveness, and through the honesty of my spirit and through my faith in Him, He kept me until He could reveal Himself unto me. And He did that right about 6 years ago, just a little over 6 years ago now. He actually revealed Himself to me. And I began to walk, truly then, I began to walk in the Spirit and in the truth. And I've been learning ever since. And I've been trying to walk according to that ever since. And children, when I really realized that, those sins really became exceedingly sinful to me. I realized that I was a sinner. I realized that I was breaking God's commandments and God's laws. And I asked Him to forgive me, you know, from the heart, even then. And like I said, He kept me until now. And until He gets done with me. For we know that the law is spiritual. See? Oh boy. The law is spiritual. And I'm carnal, sold under sin. The carnal man cannot keep the spiritual laws of God. And I've been saying that, but been saying it in a different way all along. The carnal man cannot keep the spiritual laws of God. And these laws that God said and the commandments that God give are spiritual. You know, Yeshua made that very clear in the 5th chapter of Matthew when He began to speak to the people there. And just as we was talking about here in the first part of this chapter here, you know, He said, you know, it has been said, or you have heard, that the law says, thou shalt not commit adultery. But I say unto thee, that if you look upon a woman to lust after her, you have committed adultery already in your heart. He spiritualized. Now, He went through three or four or five of them. I forget now exactly how many He went through. But He went through several of them right there. And what He was doing was He was spiritualizing them. You know, you have heard, or it has been said, thou shalt not commit, or thou shalt not kill. But I say unto you that if you hate your brother without a cause, then you've committed murder in your heart already. He's spiritualizing every one of these. But why? Because they are spiritual laws. The law is spiritual. But I'm carnal, and I'm sold under that sin because of the carnality of my flesh. And I can't keep those laws. But through Yeshua, I'm able to keep them. Through that Spirit that He gives me, I'm able to keep them, and you're able to keep them. Not no other way. I do not keep Torah, and I do not keep the law. I do it through Yeshua, the Messiah, that lives in me. That's how I do it. And he begins to, and I read these to y'all not too many Sabbaths ago when we was in Galatians. But I read this to explain to you the difference between the spirit and the flesh. And what he's explaining here and what he's beginning to explain here, and then what he begins to explain in the 8th chapter, is the difference between obeying the flesh and obeying the Spirit, or walking in the Spirit. And I'm going to read through most of these without making too much of a comment, because I'm telling you now, this is what he's doing. He's comparing between natural and spiritual. If you follow the natural man, this is what you do. Even though your mind might be saying, I shouldn't be doing that, but if you allow yourself and you yield yourself, your instruments unto that, that's what you will do. Regardless of what your mind is saying, that's what you will do. And that's what he's saying here. And like I said, I'll read through most of these without doing too much commenting, but I will probably comment occasionally. It says, for that which I do, I allow not. For what I would, that do I not. But what I hate, that I do. When we yield our members as instruments unto the flesh, that's exactly what you do. You will do that thing that the flesh wants done. If then I do that which I would not, I consent unto the law that it is good. The law is good. Now then, it is no more I that do it, but sin that dwelleth in me. Now, let me tell you something. If sin still dwells in you, honey, you're in trouble, because you're obeying that sin.
Amen.
For I know that in me, that is in my flesh, dwelleth no good thing. For to will is present with me, but how to perform that which is good I find not. How to accomplish that which is good. And as long as I follow the flesh and follow the desires of the flesh and let it lead me, honey, I will never figure out how to accomplish it or how to perform it. I will always do that. For the good that I would, I do not, but the evil which I would not, that I do. As long as you're following the flesh, no matter what the mind is saying, if you yield that unto that Spirit, you'll do that. That's exactly what you'll do. Now, in saying, let me also say that if you walk after the Spirit, then that's what you will do, not what is in the flesh. We'll get to that in the next chapter. For the good that I would not, I do not, but the evil which I would not, that I do. Now, if I do that I would not, it is no more I that do it, but sin that dwelleth in me. I find then a law that when I would do good, evil is present with me. Always. There's a fight there.
That's right.
The flesh lusteth against the Spirit lusteth against the flesh, and these two are contrary one to the other. In other words, they are different. Totally. They're different one from another. And now it's according to which one you want to follow. This one,
That's right.
or this one.
Amen.
I find then a law that I would do good, evil is present with me. For I delight in the law of God after the inward man. I delight in the law of Yahweh after or toward the inward man, or the spiritual man. But I see another law in my members, in this flesh, warring against the law of my mind, the spiritual man, bringing me into captivity to the law of sin which is in my members. You yield yourself to him, you will become, that will exactly what you will become into captivity of that law of sin which is in my members, which will what? Bring death, right?
Yes.
O wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from the body of this death, this man? I thank Yahweh through Yeshua Messiah, our Master. So then, with the mind, I myself serve the law of Yahweh. But with the flesh, see what he's saying? But with the flesh, the law of sin. This flesh will always serve the law of sin if we yield ourselves members unto it. If we allow that to be prominent in our lives, if we allow that to become part of our lives, that is what we will become. And it will bring death unto us. But as we're going to get into next week, I'm not going to start in it this week. I'm trying, and just as Paul was trying here, I'm trying to show you a difference between natural, carnal, and spiritual. Spiritual. The Spirit of Yeshua that is in us. I'm trying to contrast the two, and that's what Paul was doing here. He's contrasting the two. He's trying to give you a picture of each one here. Now I'm giving you the picture this week of the one that is natural. And like we said, if we follow that one, then that brings death. And the laws that Yahweh gave Moses in Mount Sinai, they were to keep them by the letter of the law. In other words, they were to literally, by the flesh, they were to keep those laws. And through, as Yahweh had intended, and only those that are called by Him actually sees it, but as they was intended, showed them that they could not do it in the flesh, that they would need a Messiah. And in order to have that Messiah and to have the forgiveness of those sins, then they were to have to walk according, or if you want to put it that way, yield themselves as members, their members unto the spiritual man, Yeshua, that gave his life, went into the heavens, and sent his Spirit back to you and I, which he speaks of, and especially in John 14 and 15, if you want to read about the Spirit that he's promised man. And then on Shavuot, Pentecost, he sent that Spirit back as he promised. And if we yield ourselves as members to that Spirit, then we will fulfill the laws of Yahweh, or the laws of righteousness through Him. And I hope that we're understanding this. And at the same time, I hope that we're understanding the difference between old and new. What that was old had to wax old and do away with, and that which was new had to become permanent in the lives of Yahweh's people. I hope that's becoming clear to you, and I hope that you're understanding what the Spirit is saying unto us. Shalom Aleichem today. Peace be unto you.